Afternoon, folks. I wanted to finish up what I started on this blockchain deal. I have three students' examples that I want to share with you today, and in their way, I thought they were all just absolutely gorgeous answers for what came back in. I want to start the conversation today with I'm going to tell you what the next three questions on this deal are going to be. Um, I guess before we get there, later this week, I hope to actually go outside and be fiddling with our spray rig and kind of go back to some of the hard technology part of this class, or the um, more of the precision part about what are some actual toys and tools we've got out there to work with. So if the weather's any good, I intend to be out there. Um, Sorry if that one deal's kind of in your way, but anyhow, if we scroll up here, so this student chose money, and I'm glad we got there, because that's kind of the not to offend the student, but that is kind of the low hanging fruit example, or I guess a better way to put it is the example that is out there more and definitely in use on a larger scale today. So, yeah, money's a big one. Um, I guess it bears mentioning, if we're calling it money, that may not, Bitcoin may not satisfy some people's definition of money. Um, there are going to be a lot of folks out there that money has to be backed by something, and the United States doesn't necessarily qualify anymore. Sometime in the 70s, we went off of the gold standard, and it used to be that a dollar bill represented a like amount of gold. Um, Now it is the full faith and credit of the United States government, and really don't want to get in a side conversation about that, but it is the full faith and credit of the United States government that backs a dollar bill or a $20 bill that we've got, or probably more appropriately, um, a set of numbers that's attached to your bank account. It's our government that says, nope, we checked it out, and the bank that is maintaining this account, their policies and practices are in accordance with what we say is okay for shuffling money around. And in point of fact, most of the money that most of us have is tied up in value with what the bank says your house is worth, or your ground is worth, or the cattle that you've got. And really, money at this point, a lot of times, is just a line of code at a bank somewhere. There no longer is there a ledger like an old school book where it's written down how much money you've got stored in that bank. And certainly, none of you that have a bank account, does the bank actually have $20 bills and like amount stacked up somewhere in a vault in their bank. It's all digital code right now. So in that way, jumping over to Bitcoin isn't necessarily that big of a deal. However, Bitcoin doesn't have anything other than the faith and credit of its users to back up what that's worth. Um, anyway, so that just bears a little bit of mentioning as far as Bitcoin or money goes. I thought the answer to question number 2 was well done here. The blockchain is a network of computers or sources that are used to participate and monitor the information of the assets. It also bears mentioning, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but every one of those computers, or I guess you should say a device now, has the exact same ledger that every other device on that network has. So the information is everywhere and nowhere at the exact same time, but everybody is looking at precisely the same information. It's a ledger that allows you to work with many computers and stores nodes, so blocks, to approve and store data within that ledger. then approves it, and this could be used to help organize and operate a whole bunch of different type of operations. And there was a couple of students that came in with just some incredible examples of how everybody in this system is coming together to create this data, or these nodes, or these blocks that are going into this chain of events, and the record of what happened on that chain of events. So well done. And again, money probably gives us the most concrete example, even though it's kind of an imaginary thing, the concept of money is, but pretty well done there. So how does it work? My blockchain works as a consumer buys Bitcoin. So this is the crazy thing. You can convert one type of money to another type of money. It's not all that different that if you and I got on an airplane and went to Canada or Mexico, of course their money is different than ours. And there is an exchange rate in between the two. So what this student's implying is that you can go ahead and just buy Bitcoin. You've got to exchange dollars or pesos or Canadian dollars, or whatever the case may be, to buy Bitcoins. This creates a block that keeps growing forever and ever. So that block is connected to every other block. When you bought a Bitcoin, that Bitcoin has a history associated with it. And now we've created a new chapter of history, or a new block, and it says so-and-so now owns this Bitcoin, or a percentage of it, or whatever the case may be. So again, that pretty cool concrete example there. Where is this blockchain? And again, it just goes back to all these computers that are tied together over a network. Okay, who can participate in the blockchain? So under this example, anybody who wants to buy Bitcoin can participate. And there's also the very minor barrier to entry of, you've got to have some sort of a device that can handle that computer network. That kind of goes without saying, and they're assuming that everybody has access to that technology. Pretty good comment right there. There are some blockchains that are public, meaning that anybody who wants to participate can bail in as long as you've got the technology. But this is also implying there's got to be an encryption method to this data. And basically, for the Bitcoin one, it's you download the computer software that allows you to access that encryption model. And anybody who's a participant, that system will give the encryption to. You can't unencrypt or change or modify somebody else's block or information that somebody else put in. It has to be pertaining to your ownership of it, but everybody does have the record of it. Okay. I thought this was a really cool answer. So someone can manipulate a blockchain by mining Bitcoin or purchasing, trading other crypto share. Crypto share is now the term because it's not just Bitcoin, there's competing products out there on the market. So that's what crypto share is, and they got to have a fancy name for it that sounds like some sort of magical being, but it's not. So anybody can manipulate it. Mining Bitcoin, this actually goes back to the theory of how money works. The only way the system really can work is if there's more money coming into it all the time. Now, please don't mistake me by saying I think our government ought to be just printing money and shoving more money into the economy willy-nilly. Over time, economists have studied this and said, if we add 2 or 3 or 4% more money to a given commodity every year, that seems to be where things kind of work best. And oddly enough, and even though Bitcoin tries to say, oh, we're denying the establishment and we don't want government interference, all that part is true, yet there is a certain degree of irony with it that the people who participate in Bitcoin and want that commodity or that type of money to succeed, they eventually came around to agreeing, yeah, if we put about 4% more a year of Bitcoin into the Bitcoin economy, that's kind of the grease on the skids for the deal, that it works pretty good at about that level. So I think there's a certain degree of irony there. And oddly enough, if you look at the head of government economists, they target an inflation rate, which obviously right now we're way above. But if you study economic theory, everybody eventually comes back to, yeah, we want somewhere between 2 and 4% inflation every year. That's what mining Bitcoin is. And the way you can mine Bitcoin, because you can't go out and actually dig around in the earth like you did when our money was attached to gold, and if we dug up more gold, we could put more money in the economy. Mining Bitcoin is kind of a crazy notion, but it's people that have these supercomputers. The Bitcoin economy gives them these super complex math problems to solve, and they take forever to solve, even with as good as computers are now. So you find these people that have literally thousands or hundreds of thousands of computers linked together that are working together to solve these really complicated algorithms that Bitcoin puts out. And every time you get a little bit of a solution to a math problem, it's almost like turning your math homework into the teacher. You get some credit for it, and they give you a little bit of Bitcoin. So that's what mining Bitcoin is all about. Okay, that was a pretty cool answer. Yeah, this question didn't apply as well to money as it did to all of the ag commodities that we're talking about. So it's well known, all of you know, that Bitcoin's out there. It's definitely blockchain technology. And it is, on whatever level you decide it is functional. So we've gone beyond the theory of how good is blockchain technology. So Bitcoin is proving it on a daily basis that blockchain technology works, and it can work quite well in point of fact. Now, I am not making any comments at all about how valid do you think Bitcoin is, and is it going to replace dollars or something like that. You can make up your own mind on that. But the technology surrounding it is pretty solid. Moving on. Ooh, this one's great. So this student picked lettuce. And we went with a pretty cool direction with it. And I think this one, in the most simple and concrete and most solid example, shows some of the things that we can get out of using blockchain technology. So lettuce, and you're going to see this alluded to in just a moment. Yeah, I forgot where she put this comment, but if you're a grocery store, selling lettuce is actually a pretty high risk deal, much like selling beef or milk or anything like that. So lettuce is the epitome of the sell it or smell it type thing that goes through a grocery store. Unlike selling Coca-Cola or Doritos, where they've got a shelf life that's measured in billions of years, you get into some of these other commodities. It's pretty high risk as far as the grocery store had to buy the commodity, and then they got to get it off of the shelf and onto your dinner table super quick. Also, right along with a couple of other commodities that I just mentioned, lettuce carries with it this huge risk of foodborne illness, just like selling meat or dairy products or something like that. So there's additional risk to both the food processor and the grocery store that they're selling something that, for example, has E. coli on it, or a set of wild pigs went through a lettuce field and the pigs were doing what pigs do, and they pooped in the lettuce and passed some sort of foodborne illness along. Gets exponentially riskier when we start talking about organic produce, and we can't use a lot of the stuff that you could to wash the lettuce off before you sell it. Anyways, you get the point. So super great example about it. Great answer here. Blockchain is a shared database that records information electronically, and it's secure. The information is scattered on multiple computers across the world, and because of that, that makes it even more secure. Hang on just a second. Sorry about that interruption. Your video went weird for a second. She goes on to say information that is grouped together are called the blocks. Once a block is filled in and closed, it cannot be changed, and that is one of the linchpins of this blockchain technology. When blocks are added to the chain, there are timestamps placed on it. This acts like a ledger and a timeline of when transactions were done. We also get to define what a transaction is. So we can go with the classical definition of there was money traded hands, and we get to see the record of that. That's actually going to feed right into one of the further questions that I want to ask on the next little quiz I'm going to publish about this. But we can also call a transaction, okay, if we're talking about lettuce, I went out and I traded for aphids. That could also be a transaction. It's whatever people that are participating in this particular blockchain agree a transaction is. So in agriculture, so we're going a new direction here. In agriculture, the information of what farm grew the product, where the farm was located, who processed it, who shipped it, what store did it get sold in, all of these pieces of information we're now collating around a single block, which is that head of lettuce which got sold in the grocery store somewhere. Now all of a sudden we've got data. We can track that entirely backwards until when that seed got put in the ground and everything that happened surrounding that single head of lettuce. And we can track it back in real time. You compare that to, you look at some of the food recalls, like they get hamburger recalls every now and again. There's one going on in New Jersey right now. It takes forever to track something back and find out, okay, I need to paw through all these records to find out where was it grown, what warehouses did it stop in while it was getting shipped here, and on and on and on, and all this data surrounding it. Now we can do it in real time. All I have to do is click on one block that I'm interested in, and all of a sudden it populates all the data that I want to see. So these examples are a little bit different than what we've looked at, and I thought this was kind of cool for comparison's sake. So Walmart and Albertsons have both created blockchain surrounding lettuce, so they can get data back in real time. And believe you me that Walmart and Albertsons, they are super concerned about it if they're looking at a food recall. They have a whole bunch of liability in that, and they want to be able to find out if I've got a problem with this grower or this lot or production out of this facility for that day was involved. They want to be able to find it and find it now. And they want to find out what store is a potential contamination in, so they can get that jerked off of the shelf as fast as they can and end all of this craziness surrounding a food recall. This information allows them to accurately pull the lettuce. They can get it off right now. There is no more guesswork. They know exactly what's going on. And just like people were talking about, they got a barcode when they went across scale with a load of wheat. we're going to use the same technology there. Every head of lettuce has a barcode on it, and it's going to collate back to at least a lot or a producer or whatever production facility. So really good information right there. This is cool, again, for comparison's sake. So she brings up this deal and says, okay, Walmart started this one. And she even came out and said Hyperledger, which is an IBM company. Yeah, they're administrating this blockchain. She also goes on to say that these are private blockchains, so the public can't see what's going on. This is for Tyson or Walmart or Albertsons use only, which is fine. I mean, they're the ones paying for it, and they're maintaining it, and they're the ones adding all the data to it. They've also okayed people into their blockchain sphere or their little world right there. So you get to be an authorized user is basically what I'm saying. Okay. Yeah, again, she says that Albertsons and Walmart, they're only open to authorized users. No big earth-shattering news right there. So there's obviously a barrier to participation there, and whoever's administrating their blockchain says, okay, you're in, you're out. But basically, you have to be an authorized user to view anything that's happening there. Okay, she did a super great job of explaining a lot of things there. I wanted to go to another one that's going to go to a complete different set of rules to look at. This student brings up cattle. And I got to tell you right off of the bat, there's a whole bunch of chatter in the industry right now that's saying we want to use blockchain technology so everybody gets this perfect market data. Really what we're after is what are the packers really paying for cattle so everybody has access to that data. Right now, I guess you could almost call it a good old boys network. Unless you have one of the big feedlots that you are participating in this fat cattle market almost on a daily basis, you really don't have very good information about what's going on in the market, even though there are literally thousands of places that you can go read what's going on. There are so many little ducks and dives as far as getting away from government-mandated price reporting that there is not a whole pile of clarity out in that market right now. This student actually took it a different way, and I thought it was pretty cool. So, yeah, you've heard the definitions about what is a blockchain, how does it work. This student comes in with basically the same thing, but she certainly applied it to her commodity, which is cattle. But now I want to go here. We can track everything from the birthday, the weight, the gender, the day we sell them to the feedlot, what their finishing weight was. She is taking this back to an individual basis. In order to kind of prove what I'm getting at, in this country last week, we killed 665,000 head of cattle, and I should have used a better term. We processed 665,000 head of cattle. We have data coming out of the ears about, okay, how many of them graded choice or select or prime, and what was their yield grade. We've got data like that coming out of our ears. It basically, at best, goes back to what did an entire pen or lot of cattle do at the feed yard. We don't have a good way at all of tracking it back to an individual basis. She's going to go on to further state that she wants to use all this information so she can look backwards in time very easily and quickly to figure out, okay, this calf was born to that cow. How did it perform? What did we learn from that? And taking those lessons forward, how can I adjust what bulls I'm buying? Or how can I do a better job of putting cattle in the feed yard? Or what went wrong here? What went right there? She's looking for a super handy place to where we can get information. She's also kind of alluding to another thing. In her example, she's owning the cattle all the way through. But if you take me, for example, I run the cattle until I wean them. Then they get sold to somebody else. I completely lose those cattle after that. And there's a whole bunch I can learn as a manager if I knew what those cattle performed like or what happened to them after I sold them. I can make better decisions and deliver a better product to my customers or you at the grocery store if I had access to all that data. The way it works right now is the trail goes cold as soon as I sell those cattle. This student owns the cattle all the way through the feed yard. Not necessarily the most common thing in the world the way she's set up, but that is still pretty cool. Excuse me. With all the blockchain, every calculation is recorded and utilized to improve next year's cattle crop. Individual transactions will be divided into blocks and linked together in time-ordered form. So we get to see a chronological sequence of events, and it's all available at your fingertips. She makes the point, you go down a little bit further and you see that, okay, we've got our guy in the feed yard, we've got our guy that handles the cattle outside, and we're growing hay to go along with it, and we're feeding this much of that, and how the feed truck driver, she answers, so this is the list of people who are in on their blockchain. So she's obviously got a private one, but it keeps going like that and says, okay, the feed truck driver can manipulate the blockchain, and that's exactly correct. So the feed truck driver is an authorized user and gets to add that data to the blockchain. Absolutely perfect answer right there. But if I flip back to this student who's talking about lettuce, we're coming around to a pretty cool point. If I can find it. She says, it's unfortunate that the public could not go on it and look to see where their food and products are coming without having to pay to participate in this blockchain. That right there, that little statement, and this student is saying basically the same thing in a different way, or turning that comment on its head that says, yeah, this is how all of the people associated with the cattle we're dealing with, you know, we've all got access to the same information and we're all adding information to it. Whereas the previous student talking about lettuce was like, well, I would love to be able to use this and let people see exactly what happened to that head of lettuce. And she's using it as a marketing tool. But I think this student is doing exactly the same thing and using it as a marketing tool to say, okay, I'm going to present these fed cattle to a packing plant, and here is absolutely everything that has happened to that animal from conception forward. Almost the same as our lettuce student was saying, I want to be able to present to my end user everything that happened to this head of lettuce from seed on. So, pretty cool there. The last thing I wanted to end with for my discussion today, and I thought this answer was so elegant just because of its simplicity. I asked, where is the blockchain? Excuse me, I'll find it. The blockchain is where the cattle are raised and where they're produced. It's next to their mamas. It's in the feed truck with the driver. And it's even hanging next to that carcass in the packing plant. I thought that answer was pretty cool. Sorry about that interruption. So the next 3 questions I'm going to ask you is, so these are going to be your opinion type questions. What do you think would happen if users didn't agree about a transaction? What do you think might go wrong or right there? Next question is going to be, tell me what value you perceive by the public being able to use a blockchain that maybe is just private in as much as you have to be a user to add blocks to it. But do you think it'd be a good deal if the public could just look at your blockchain, even if they can't modify it in any way? And then the last question I've got is, what barriers do you perceive to using this technology as a tool for something approaching perfect market transparency, or being able to deliver perfect transparency and information to your customers? So cool, that's what I've got. Thank you for your time today. And like I said, I hope to, in some way or another, get a video camera out in the field this Thursday and look at a spray rig and some of the precision technology attached to that. Thank you.